you know what, it's always nice to get off the mark at a new venue. And especially when it's opportunist like that. Well, that's a cool old Shropshire Common. Didn't take long to catch either. Been here a couple of hours. Was having a look around and saw some fizzing, and I didn't waste any time. Got the gear out of the van, pulled a couple of rigs out, and yeah, it's taken about an hour to catch one. So yeah, now I'm actually off the mark. I suppose I should really go and have a look around. Let's get you back. Birch Grove is a historic mere nestled deep in the Shropshire countryside. Back in the 90s, it was quite a famous syndicate, fished by the likes of Tim Paisley and Crowey, but these days it's run as an exclusive booking venue, fishable by up to 4 anglers. The lake itself is around 4 acres in size. It's surrounded by mature trees and fringed by stands of lilies and Norfolk reed. The fishing is predominantly to the far bank from 3 swims. These are the boards, the helipad and the compound. I wanted to have a really good look round and familiarise myself with the lake as I'm here for a few days. I've checked out the swims, I've checked out the stalking areas, and I've even been off-piste and had a little crawl around some of the less accessible parts of the lake. Well, we're at the furthest end of the lake for the lodge now, in a swim called the Boards, and I have to say I think this is my favourite swim. Even though I actually fished in the helipad this morning for an hour and caught one, this swim is a little bit more practical. Everything's a little bit closer. Can reach the far margin pads. There's quite a few options. Great view right down the lake. I'm not going to miss anything that happens from here. Well, I've got to the swim and it was my plan to go out in the boat, have a little look around and maybe put a bit of bait out. But actually, as I've arrived, there's one fizzing out there by the pads. So ever the opportunist, I think I'm going to pull one out there and try and catch him quickly before I disturb the swim. Birch Grove is actually a pretty ancient venue. It was formed in the Ice Age. It's surrounded by mature trees which pump in loads of leaf detritus, and as a result it's extremely silty. For a lot of carp anglers, they're kind of taught that silt is maybe not what they want to be presenting their rig on. They want to be looking for somewhere harder, but actually silt shouldn't really hold any fears for the angler. The silt actually holds a lot of food that the carp are searching for all the time, and when you see them fizzing, they've got their heads buried right into it. So there's not really anything to be scared of. The fish will feed in the silt. Conventional wisdom is that when you're fishing in deep silt, you fish a slightly longer hook link. Now, when I turned up on the first morning, I literally shipped out the rigs that I had on the rods already, quite short multi-rigs. I think it's something to take forward for a lot of anglers, is that you don't really need to change that much. The location is the most important thing, and you just have to trust that if you've got a good bait and the fish really want to eat it, that they'll find it in that silt. Now, I had a quick go for bubblers before I got the boat out, but I have been out in the boat. You know, you are allowed to use the boat for finding spots and baiting up, although you can't put your rigs out with it. So I took full opportunity of that and had a good look along the far margin, because you can't actually get round there and have a look. So the only way to actually kind of check it out was to go out in the boat. Anyway, it's quite interesting. It's very, very soft out there, pretty much as I suspected. You know, with the amount of fizzing that those fish were kicking up earlier, it definitely wasn't hard, but it's actually quite surprising how soft it is. I took a couple of pole sections out with me to use as a prodding stick, and yeah, it goes right down through the silt. I think you could keep pushing for most of it. As far as getting the rods out, I've got 3 traps spread along my right hand and far margin, and I had a good feel about with the boat, and it is pretty soft, you know. But I'm happy that those rigs are presenting. Those fish are burying right down into the silt as they feed. So even if those pop-ups are on the surface of the silt or slightly below, I feel there's a good chance that the fish, once they start grubbing around, will pick up the hook bait. Indeed, you know, I was fishing on soft earlier on and I had a bite on that, so I'm not too fussed. If I feel like my hook bait's being obscured, maybe I'll lengthen my rigs tomorrow, but for tonight I'm pretty happy. Although I'm actually poling the rigs out with a bushwhacker, I did go and spread a little bit of bait out with the boat, just to get a little bit of a wider area. You know, when you're fishing in 6 or 7 feet like it is over there, you don't get great spread of bait. And I want those fish that are mooching about, you know, the water's fairly coloured, they can't see, so I want a little bit of smell in the area to try and attract them to come down and feed. I was up at first light this morning, and it's a beautiful morning, bright sunshine. There was quite a few fish fizzing out. As soon as it was light enough, you know, I could see that they were bubbling out in the middle of the lake. And I was sat there drinking a coffee thinking I should really move and ship a rod onto them like I did yesterday morning. Yeah, the middle rod fish to the far margin has just hooped over. And yeah, I've walked straight back out. It's kind of a snag fishing tactic. You don't try and reel in, you just walk back with the rod. And yeah, I've got him out of the pads and he's wallowing out here in front of me. Now that's a great way to start the day. I was sat drinking a coffee, watching the fish bubbling up the lake, and a rod fish to the pads on the far margin has clattered over this classic dumpy old school common. Nice cool one. Well, I'm on coffee number 4 in the morning. I don't think I can drink anymore or I'll be a nervous wreck. But yeah, it's been an interesting morning watching them out fizzing over my rig. Haven't had a bite on that rod, even though I made sure I got one out there quite early. The bite that I did get came from the far margin. So yeah, I've kind of spent the first 24 hours gently, not making too much disturbance, not putting too much bait in. That's always served me quite well in the past, you know, turning up on these kind of venues. So now I've actually still got a few days ahead of me. I'm going to put a little bit of bait in. I think where those fish have been fizzing, it's not been in a particular area, it's been more of a zone. So I think I'm going to go out in the boat, I'm going to spread a few boilies about to try and kind of get them off the naturals and into picking up bait. I'm not going to go mad. 100 to 200 baits kind of spread over the size of a tennis court. For me, that should be enough, you know, to kind of turn things in my favour. So it's been a nice relaxing afternoon. After I reeled the rods in and spread a little bit of bait about, we went and chilled in the lodge, had a little bit of lunch. I just wanted to rest, swim and keep an eye on the lake. Anyway, it didn't take long for the fish to know that there was no pressure because they started jumping and fizzing where I had that bite this morning. Indeed, so much so that I rushed back round to get the rods back out. So I've got 2 rods out on that and I've got a 4th rod out and I've put 2 rods out over on that spreader monster shrimp that I put out with the boat earlier. So I'm just fishing 2 singles over the top and I cast those out to keep it nice and simple. Didn't really want to get the boat out again. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. They were definitely fizzing in that area this morning. I got a bite off that far margin this morning, so now I've got both areas covered. We were just about to turn in for the night. What's going on here? It's literally swimming at me. And the right hand rod's clattered over. And I've got myself a scaly mirror after a couple of commons. Oh, it's woken up now. That was crazy. It just swam straight at me. Feel weird to play him on a short line, but just trying to keep him clear of all those pad stems. Yes, gotcha. I think. Yes, boys. Well, we're just about to turn in. It's gone 1 o'clock. And the right hand rod's hooped over. And that was the rod that I pulled over to the alcove where the fish were fizzing and bubbling earlier on. It's taken a few hours, but I've got myself a bite. And I tell you what, I was in that lodge earlier looking at some of the beautiful scaly mirrors on the wall, And I've had a couple of commons, you know, and I was kind of hoping I was going to get a mirror. There we go. The morning started off as I hoped it would. I woke up to a bite. That turned out to be a really nice carp as well, a mid-20 mirror. Had this one at very first light, and I made a decision not to put the rod back out again. I was fishing two rods quite close together. I didn't want to disturb the area, and actually about 20 minutes later, that proved to be the right decision because I got a bite on the other rod. But what that means is I need a change of tactics. These fish are obviously hungry, and that's 2 bites over the bait that I put in. So the shrimp did the job yesterday. I think that means I'm gonna have a little move down the lake so I can concentrate my efforts over that bait. What a nice carp. Well pleased with that. But that's 2 bites this morning, and they're still feeding out there. I don't really want to chuck leads on top of them when they're actually fizzing. So I'm gonna grab a couple of rods, I'm gonna grab my pole, I'm going to go down the bank and I'm going to ship it on top of them from one of the other swims. I might not move wholesale, I might stay in here, but most of the activity seems to be further down the lake, and I can still get to that spot from the next swim down, so I think maybe a little move is on the cards today. But yeah, let's just sort out this multi, put a new hook on, nice and simple, and get these rods back out. I'm greedy, I reckon we could get another one this morning. Oh, the move paid off handsomely, didn't it? A quick bite which sadly fell off, but the one that I poked under that little cavern in the trees opposite, that went, so it was worth baiting that one up. I baited it twice, the day that I arrived and yesterday. Luckily the pads aren't too thick in front here. I tell you, every single fish has fought really hard in here, really hard. Another mirror, another leathery one like the one this morning. Got him, yes. Woo, that was a mega battle. Count myself very lucky to have landed that one. Well, I think that's my favourite carp of the trip so far. Really aggy, but a lovely little fish. Yeah, really nice. And that one came from an alcove opposite that I've baited twice over the last couple of days, with a couple of good handfuls of monster shrimp. And actually that was the first time I've dropped a rod in, and it only took about 10 minutes to get a bite, so they were definitely there waiting. It's my 4th bite of the morning. Sadly, I lost one about half an hour before this. Just fell off, but you can't win them all, can you? But we have a good go. Yeah, it's been a great morning. I always try and keep my rig stuff as simple as possible. I really don't want to be worrying that the rig's not effective or I'm not fishing properly. I want to use something which I know is going to work pretty much everywhere I take it. So here's my multi-rig, super simple, really easy to tie. And the main reason that I use it is that I can change the hook without tying an entire new hook link. So it's pretty economical. You can recycle components like beads and bait screws. I've got that attached to an inline lead setup, fish drop-off style, although the lead will only drop off if it hits some sort of obstruction. The lead itself is 2 ounces. I don't need a heavy one in this situation because the chances are is it's going to be sucked into the silt and it will behave as a much larger lead. The hook link's tied up using skin link, 25 £, semi-stiff. So although it's got a little bit of stiffness to stop it tangling when I'm dropping it from the pole, it is supple enough that it will sit up over obstructions, and if the lead gets stuck into the silt, it won't be kicked up at some strange angle. I tie an overhand loop at one end, which doubles the material over, and that gives it an extra degree of anti-tangle, so I don't need an extra anti-tangle sleeve on that.
I weight it with Klingon putty, but I don't critically balance it. I actually want that to be sinking fairly quickly, because when the fish picks it up, the rig sinking is what will hook it as it drops into the base of the mouth. I'm using 6 feet of Klingon leader at the back end, and that will help keep the line sort of tucked out of the way. And it's pretty discreet, the whole thing, you know. Once that's sat on the bottom, there's no way that any fish are going to actually make it for a rig, you know. Confidence is key in fishing, so when you turn up to a new venue, you really want to be starting off with something that you know works wherever else you've used it. And indeed, that was the case for me. When I turned up, I wasn't thinking about rigs, I was just dropping out a multi-rig. And when you catch one really quickly, it does, you know, give you that confidence to continue using it. Perhaps I would have lengthened it if I hadn't caught one straight away, but actually it's turned out that I haven't needed to. My rig seemed to have worked pretty well. Got a bit lucky that time, he kited to the right, away from that snaggy tree line, and then swam straight towards me. It looks like it's going to be a tussle in the pads at my feet, which I much prefer, because at least we're over the top of it. There we go. Oh yes, boys. Well, that was definitely worth the move, wasn't it? One of the major considerations when you go on any kind of fishing holiday or to a lake exclusive is making sure that you've got the right kind of bait and enough bait for your trip. The mainstay of my baiting approach on this trip has been based around a kind of particle mix. Really simple, really effective as well, you know, lots of different size particles. So that's small seed mix and large seed mix, some 6mm pellet and a few boilies, both 12mm and 15mm monster shrimp. The advantage of having this kind of mix is not only have you got lots of different size particles, but you've got some larger ones also to keep the nuisance fish at bay, you know, make sure that there's a few larger bits in it to stop the roach and the rudd from pecking away. When you're fishing in really deep and fine silt, it is important that you've got some finer stuff that doesn't sink too far into the silt as well. You know, the boilies will sort of sink in, but your smaller seeds will present on the top of the silt. And that's what you want to draw the carp in and get them interested. Well, I'd only just got the rods out for my last night on Birch, and this was away. I'd only been out there about half an hour. So yeah, he's a lovely old fish. And if this is my last Birch carp, well, I've had a brilliant week, but it would be nice to get a bigger one tonight. So fingers crossed. But whatever happens, I've had a lovely time. Well, that brings to an end my few days at Birch Grove. It's a lovely place. I've had a really nice relaxing time, and I've had a few nice carp as well. Hung it out till the bitter end this morning to try and get one of those bigger ones, but I'm not complaining. With about 15 bites, you know, it's been a good week, solid week. So yeah, maybe one day I'll come back and try and catch one of those Birch 30s.